With the government now back open, the Congressional Western Caucus is pushing forward on key priorities. And today's Champions of Rural America, we're going to review not only their top initiatives, but also some recent victories. Caucus Chairman Doug LaMalfa of California joins us now for an update. Congressman, always a pleasure to have you join us here. Of course, you voted to end the shutdown. And now that that's happened, what legislation is the Western Caucus now planning on driving forward? What are your top priorities here?
Well, I'm just stepped out of the Natural Resources Committee hearing on that, where we have a bill called the SPEED Act that will speed up the process of getting permits and have the NEPA process not be nearly as burdensome, basically weaponized to stop projects, to stop things that people need to get done. In my home state of California, we're constantly working on water, waterways, and that type of infrastructure for building more storage, such as raising Shasta Dam in NorCal and adding the Sites Reservoir in NorCal. And the other work that needs to be done to make the whole system of water work better, as an example, and also energy. And the mandates that states and governors and others are coming up with to make everything be electrical powered. Where do you get the minerals to have all to make all the devices that use copper, that uses other critical minerals and such, if we can't mine them in this country? So NEPA needs to be reformed. It was passed 60 years ago, and it's turned into a kind of a monster on that. Now, you got to hear the arguments in committee, though, like, oh, my gosh, we're going to eviscerate the environment and all this. Like, no, it's a course correction on that. So that's important work.
Well, Congressman, since you have mentioned one of the things you mentioned, water, another big victory here. EPA has announced revisions to the definition of WOTUS. How do you see this change really benefiting farmers and landowners, especially out there in California?
It's a long time coming. We've been building on that for a while, but really this ruling is extremely important to kind of finish that discussion, because WOTUS, waters of the United States, during the Obama era, and it's even built on that previously, is that they believe that every place where a drop of water falls, there's those in government that think that we should regulate that and control it and make it impossible for landowners, farmers, whoever, to do what they would normally do. We had issues up in Northern California where people were plowing their land. It had been idle after a period of time. They wanted to plant it back to some more wheat. It had been farmed before. They had to get a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers along with the EPA, and they didn't know about needing a permit because their county office of ag said, "Oh, fine, go do it." And so they got a giant hassle and a big old fine over that for doing what would be normal, because it's the water United States. And so it never was meant that, when these laws are passed back in the late 60s and early 70s by Congress, whether it's Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, NEPA, all those things, if they had passed a law that was doing what they're doing now, they would have been thrown out of office then, because it's so onerous to try and keep up to these regulations. Every mud puddle, every little bit of water that falls on the land does not belong to the federal government. And so seeing this reform on WOTUS is very important for farmers, ranchers, anybody that does things outside, that produces the things that we want and we ask for anyway.
Absolutely, Congressman. From water to energy, the House voted on Tuesday to pass resolutions that will roll back Biden-era energy policies sponsored by Western Caucus Vice Chair Harriet Hageman. Speak to these repeals benefiting rural Americans and American energy dominance. You had mentioned, of course, about the rare earth minerals being dependent here in the States and not looking, especially to our adversaries, for help.
Harriet's doing a fantastic job as representative from Wyoming there. And that's very strong coal country, as you know. And so there's a tremendous amount of coal deposits in this nation that we should be continuing to take advantage of. But all the other forms of energy as well. We're having a great big argument down there again on this NEPA reform and natural resources. They believe that we're going to rely on wind and solar as continuing to be a bigger core. And they're fine, but they're not what we call base load power. They're not available 24 hours a day. If you got to wait for the sun to come up, you got to wait for the clouds to blow away. It's cloudy here in DC. You're not going to get a lot of power out of that. So what do you have to have? You have to have backup power plants that are using the energy source we should be using anyway, whether it's nuclear, whether it's hydro, whether it's natural gas, or how about biofuels, using some of those forest products that are burning up millions of acres every year. These are the things you can count on, that fuel source, to keep the generators running 24 hours, because you can stock the fuel supply. You can't stock wind, you can't stock sunshine. Some will say, well, we need more batteries. Like, well, that's fine and dandy, but the batteries take up many acres of space, in order to have the battery capacity you would need to last very long. And they all take precious metals too, you know, critical minerals that we can't mine in this country. We have to import all these products. So the Democrats and the environmental lefties, they don't have a solution to anything. They just try and stop each thing along the way. So that's what we're trying to do, is to streamline these regulations that started out well intended back in the 60s and 70s and just been court case after court case, and environmental groups empowered by getting paid to do these lawsuits have made just a tangled mess for us in this country.
Congressman, we do appreciate your time. Thank you for all the work that you do on behalf, of course, of this country. We appreciate it very much, especially those in rural America. Congressional Western Caucus Chairman, Congressman Doug LaMalfa.